Mentoring has the power to shape lives, open doors, and build confidence. Today, we're diving into the world of mentoring, and our guest, Greg Warmbrunn, a board member from the charity RITE Mentoring, will help us explore why it matters, how it works in practice, and the impact it can have on both mentors and mentees. I'm Ian Bunston. Welcome to Monday Matters. Welcome, Greg. Great to have a chat with you this morning.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for the invitation.
Greg, a really interesting area, mentoring. Why do you think mentoring matters and what makes it so powerful?
Well, great questions, Ian. I'm an advocate and always have been for mentoring. I think it's one of those aspects of life that tends to get washed to the margins as life gets more busy. And in my experience, that's certainly been the case. So why does mentor matter? Basically, it accelerates growth and learning from a confidential other, the mentor and the mentee. You can get insights in mentoring that you can't really get by yourself. And of course, in the past, mentoring was all about passing on skills, like a knight and a sage, for example. That was the type of mentoring that has been historically been part of the learning process. But it is changing, and we'll have a quick talk about that later on. The main thing I've seen, particularly I've worked mostly with adolescent boys and young men, although I have worked with girls and women as well. But in adolescent boys and men, one of the things that's been washed away from many, not all, of course, is this level of self-confidence. And mentoring can re-engage that confidence level. It just needs to be reimagined and rediscovered. So that's why it really matters for me in my world. I was a teacher for 42 years at a private school, and you would think at a private school, the boys and the girls would be full of confidence, but it's just a reality that everyone's an individual, regardless of where they come from, the level of money in their life. And I've done a lot of mentoring with students and young adults because they asked for it. It wasn't part of my teaching role, but they asked for it in the pastoral sense. So it's just a wonderful thing. Someone wise said, I actually wrote this down because it's struck a chord with me. Someone once said that mentors matter or mentoring matters because it turns experience into wisdom and potential into achievement. And while that's just a saying, I've actually seen that happen in young lives. So why is it so powerful? It's really, it transfers skills, of course, but in my experience, it changes lives and it changes destinies. And I don't want to overplay this, but when a person is mentored well, they see life differently and sort of like from a different paradigm. And all of a sudden, what was impossible becomes possible. And if that mentoring's done at an early stage in life, it can change a life destiny. And I've got no doubt, many of the people I've worked with over the years, that's exactly what happened. By the way, I'm not patting myself on the back here. This is for any mentor where mentoring has worked.
Now, Greg, I'm aware that you've had mentors in your own life. Can you
Yeah.
share just maybe one experience that really shaped you?
Yeah. Well, I grew up with mentors all around me. I didn't realize it at the time, but my father was a wonderful mentor, my grandparents, my uncles, in my local church. There's so many men who, in a very positive sense, took an interest in me from a very young age. And many of those men were my dad's friends. But one guy in particular, Bruce, up until I was about 30, I played footy and cricket and tennis and all that type of thing. But Bruce came into my life. He was about 25 years older than me, and through a set of circumstances, and he mentored me in the area of bushwalking, sailing, skiing, parachuting, all of those things that I would never have done. He taught me how to build an igloo and sleep in an igloo. So it was just, I think it was a God moment, but it could be just a chance moment. Our paths crossed. And even though he had children of his own, he took an interest in me and gave me time and energy and he just broadened my perspective on life. And I'm living a different life today because the things that he mentored me in, sort of instructed me in, are now my great loves.
Bruce sounds like a wonderful person.
He
Greg,
was.
can you tell us about someone that you've mentored, and the impact that you believe that you've had on their life journey?
Yep, I can, and obviously it's all confidential. But there was one boy who I worked with for quite a few years, and he had his ups and downs in life. His self-esteem was pretty average, um, and he got into a bit of trouble. Um, but over a period of time, he settled down and um, he finished school, which I didn't think initially when I started mentoring him he wasn't going to do. Um, and he very much appreciated what I was doing, and his parents did too. And ironically, his father was a child psychologist, but he and his dad didn't have a good relationship, which sometimes happens, of course. In any case, he got through to the end of the school, and it was a success. I lost track of him. I finished my mentoring with him. I lost track of him, but just last year, I had a phone call out of the blue, and it was this boy. It was Jake. And Jake, I was really staggered to hear his voice. I hadn't seen him for 23 years. 23 years. And I said, "Oh, Jake, good to hear from you. Where are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm in hospital." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Jake. What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, yesterday I tried to take my life, and I'm in a suicide watch ward of a hospital. And they said you could make one phone call to one person. Who would you like to call?" And he said, "I thought of you." 23 years ago, I'd mentored him, and he said, "You had such a profound effect on my life. I thought I'd give you a call as someone I could trust and have a chat with." And to say that I was blown away would be an understatement. I mean, that type of experience might never happen in someone's life, but it happened to me. And so I've re-engaged after all those years.
That's certainly a remarkable experience. Greg, what do you think, or what qualities make someone a great mentor, and in that fact also a great mentee?
Yeah, good question, Ian. Well, again, in my experience, and everyone's experience is different. I'm not saying mine's the bee's knees, but at the end of the day, a mentoring works when there's a relationship, and relationships are predicated on trust and honesty and openness. And a good mentor will encourage the mentee to be vulnerable because they also show vulnerability themselves. So all of this is within the confidence, the cone of silence, for example, to quote Get Smart. If that confidence is ever broken, the mentoring just goes out the door. It's very hard to re-establish a mentoring relationship. So um, there's some of the qualities. A mentor's attitude to life. Uh, I've found over the years, if a mentor is a positive person, looks at life a bit glass half full rather than half empty, that helps. Um, and has had some type of experience being mentored themselves. So it's not just a head knowledge, it's a lived knowledge. I've never been asked before, what qualities does a mentee have? That's a really good question. Um, I had to think about that. I would have to think about that. I would say curiosity. A mentee has got to be curious as to what could be different in their life. Um, they'd have to have some type of openness, be prepared to actually chat. They couldn't, it's very hard to have a mentoring relationship where only the mentor talks. Because a good mentor listens rather than talks. So, openness. Over time, a sense of gratitude. I think that would be a good quality in a mentee, that they actually see they're getting value in the relationship and they're grateful for it. And over time, depending on the circumstances of the mentoring, a growing respect for the other person and respect for themselves, and maybe in the best case situation, an increasing self-awareness so that they don't have the shutters on their life and their experiences. They actually can become more self-aware, and through self-awareness comes growth.
Yeah. Greg, do you think that the idea of mentoring has changed over time, and where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, it's an interesting question as well, Ian. In the past, many of us might have been mentored, say, within the business world for careers, promotion, job creation. So you'd have the boss or one of the line managers mentoring a younger person for career aspirations. So it used to be in the past top down. There's no doubt about that. Mentoring, again, even in my lifetime, has changed. It's now more peer-to-peer. It's more egalitarian. There's not a power imbalance. The power imbalance has pretty much gone from good quality mentoring, so it's an equal playing field. Um, it's more collaborative, and to that extent, many mentors would say they learn as well as the mentee learning. One of the things that has changed radically, even since COVID, is the use of technology. So now you can become a mentor or get mentored from anyone in the world. It's just a matter of having the connection and the relationship. One of the downsides of where it's going at the moment, it is morphing a little bit. Mentoring is morphing more into well-being and those areas of life which are a bit robbery. Well-being, what does that mean? It's in a lot of mentoring now. Positive self-esteem, those areas of life, in my opinion, are a little bit more rubbery. But I still think a great mentoring situation is predicated on relationships, honesty, and trust. And I think and by the way, the other thing, just very quickly, I know time's pressure, but mentoring takes time. And one of the collateral damages, in my opinion, of modern day life, and particularly since COVID, is everyone's now more anxious and they're more time conscious and they're doing things more on the run. And you can't do that with mentoring. You've got to dedicate time and space and intentionality. It's got to be ongoing. It's got to be longitudinal. So mentoring, I think it's actually taken a bit of a hit, ironically, at a time when it's needed more than ever. And certainly at my school, mentoring and psych help went through the roof after COVID. I'm not so sure that mentoring has come back as strong because everyone says they're time poor.
Now, Greg, I don't think you'll mind me mentioning it, but you've recently retired and you're moving into the best chapter of your life. Would you agree?
It's a different chapter. Yeah, look, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I've still got a bit of FOMO, missing out of
Yeah.
what's going on. And I do tutor about 8 students from Carey, did I say the school, with mathematics. And I am doing a bit of work, as you know, with Deakin. So it is a good stage in life.
Yes,
It's different.
you look well. You don't look
Yeah,
like
thank
you're
you.
out of a day teaching, you know.
Yeah.
But look, you're on the board for a group called RITE
Mhm,
Mentoring, RITE Mentoring.
mhm.
Can you tell us about the organisation, what it does, and why you think the work's important?
So, right mentoring is a bit of a bespoke pastoral care, mentoring, counselling service. It's one of the smaller organisations around that I've been associated with, but it piqued my curiosity initially because it works. It had its genesis back in about 2008, 2009, when chaplains were going into school and working with students that were finding school difficult. But the originators of RITE, it was called Ignite in those days, but RITE, have found that schools had these, particularly boys who are dropping out of schools with significant issues, but they didn't have the capacity or the resources to deal with them. So RITE started up initially in the southeastern suburbs, particularly around Dandenong, some of the more socioeconomically tough situations. And they went into schools and worked not one-to-one. RITE is not a one-to-one mentoring service. It's where a mentor goes into a group and historically it's been boys, although this year we've started with girls as well. And they sit down with a group of about 10, and they are sort of 14 to 17-year-olds, so years sort of 8 to 11, and they talk about life. We have 3 full-time mentors, and we have a number of part-time mentors that are voluntary, and they just sit down and talk about life. And the boys are there by choice. It's not an elective, and it's during their lunchtime. They have to give up their lunchtime. And the schools invite us in. We don't push our way in. The schools invite us in. I don't do mentoring as such. I'm on the board, so I'm more on the governance side. But I became involved with RITE because I read its history and I read some of the outcomes of their mentoring program, and I was gobsmacked how lives were changed.
Mm. And Greg, before I let you go, predominantly we've been talking about mentoring with males, but you've just touched on the fact that it's also saying to include females.
Yes.
Tell us about can you just tell us about maybe the developments in that area? And girls need it just as much as boys, would you say?
Yeah, well, that's right. Initially, the RITE mentors went into boys' schools. That's why we had boys. But now they're into co-ed schools, and they're into private, and they're also into obviously government's high schools as well. There was a chaplain in one of the schools down the southeast suburbs, and she saw RITE come in, and she became intrigued with it, and she noticed it was for boys because that was our backstory. And she just quizzed our executive officer director why girls can't be involved as well. And he said, "There's no reason. We just haven't had any female mentors. We have a background of boys only. Would you like to be one?" So she took it up as a pilot program this year, and it's a no-brainer. It went as successfully as it did with boys. So now, part of in our strat plan for 2026, we are intentionally now going to be going down the track of working with girls and finding the appropriate mentors to work with girls.
So, Greg, there could be people listening today where you've just sparked a new idea in their mind. They could be semi-retired, moving into retirement like yourself, and they could have the time for something like this. What would you say to them if they were feeling like they wanted to move into this space?
Yeah, look, it's a good question too, Ian. A mentor is anyone, but it's someone who has the right skill set, obviously, to state the obvious, who can work, in our case, with adolescents. So, particularly teachers, principals, chaplains from the past who are now retired, absolutely. If they have the willingness, I'm sure there would be positions open in the mentoring program across the board, but particularly with RITE. If you've never had any experience in mentoring adolescents, it's not for the faint-hearted. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because you sort of need a bit of a track record of how they think, how they tick. But if the chemistry was right, yeah, absolutely. Retirement is a perfect time. In fact, our longest serving mentor has been retired for years, and he actually mentors teenage boys.
Mm. Well, Greg, look, this is a great example of utilizing your time in a season of life where you do have that little bit more time and availability. And if it's the right fit for you, then it's wonderful. And you're still contributing in this space by being a board member for RITE. Obviously, a wonderful organisation. Been really insightful talking to you this morning
Thank you.
about the power of mentoring and how it can be still alive and still an ongoing strategy to really improve and help and support folk in their lives. So thank you for sharing your insights this morning and being a member or our guest here at Monday Matters.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you.